Next up, I'm super pleased to welcome Dr. Steve Wright, who is a Senior Research Fellow in Avionics and Aircraft Systems at the University of the West of England. A little word on Steve's history. He spent 25 years as a software, electronics and systems engineer in the aerospace industry, where he contributed to the design and then the development of the avionics for a variety of Airbus and Boeing airliners. Since joining academia, he's been part of the current revolution in aviation, enabling electric power and miniaturized computers, focusing on the development of novel airframes and systems for unmanned electric aerial vehicles, which I think he might show us an example of when we come to see him in a moment. As with all of our speakers, please do remember to keep submitting your questions for Steve and indeed for all the other speakers. Steve, welcome to this EV Summit EY event, and over to you, please.
Hello, good afternoon. So many thanks, Aid. So firstly, let me introduce myself. Yes, I'm Steve Wright. There's far too many Steve Wrights in the world, but this particular one, as Aid says, I'm at the University of West of England. After 25 years in aerospace industry, I was at Rolls-Royce and then Airbus. And then 7 years ago, I switched into academia, and since then I've been entirely focused on electric flight with, as I say, manned and unmanned electric aviation. And so in that sense, I'm a perfect example of what this industry change is all about. And I have to say, in the time I've worked in the aerospace industry, 30 years, I've never seen anything like the changes that have occurred in the last 3 or 4 years. So let me set a bit of a technical scene for perhaps what we're talking about, and this will help to shape our thoughts when we're talking about it later. And the first thing to think about aerospace is weight. Weight is always king, and it's all about what can we do with a kilogram of equipment or fuel. And so one of the things that dominates aerospace, and it's particularly huge in this new world, is the energy density problem. In other words, how much energy can we cram into 1 kilogram of fuel or storage facility? So I won't bore you too much with too many numbers. I'm going to halve my audience with every number. But suffice it to say that let's start with hydrocarbon, with petrol or kerosene, and that has over 40 megajoules, just 40 units of energy per kilogram of weight. The rather entertaining one as well that I always hold up is good old lard, food of champions, the natural world. That actually has 37 megajoules, 37 units of energy in a kilogram of lard. And that gives us a clue as to why nature's so good at making unmanned aerial vehicles. I don't see one up there right now as the window. And because we've got this very, very effective fuel. Another example I always cite as well is good old dynamite, a stick of dynamite. Although funnily enough, dynamite doesn't have a very large energy density. It's only got about 5 of these units per kilogram. But of course, this gives us an insight now into the differences between these different energy sources. It can manifest that energy far more quickly, far more power and punch than the conventional fuels that we're used to. So that now brings us on to the battery technology that we've got at the moment. And as I say, I'm going to talk chiefly about electric at the moment, because sooner or later we're always dealing with electric. And current batteries only about 2 megajoules per kilo. So that's mitigated a bit because the sort of powertrains we can use with electric flight are more efficient, roughly double, but that still leaves us about 10 times further away from the energy densities that we can achieve with hydrocarbons. So as an engineer, I'm always acutely aware that for the last 150 years, we've been absolutely spoilt rotten by this incredible energy source that we've had so freely available. So that's the bad news, that's the hard bit. But let's think about what electric flight and alternative propulsion systems can do. What does it do better? And it does happen. Well, the very first thing is power. So to give an example, I can make a drone, and we built a drone a while ago that did 0 to 60 in 0.9 seconds. so roughly twice as quick as a Formula One car. So quite a spectacular achievement, given the small size and small cost of these sort of vehicles. And that's in the unmanned domain. The other aspect that electric flight allows us to leverage is flexibility. What do I mean by flexibility? It means that we can sprinkle propulsion systems all over our aircraft. We can arrange the propulsion systems in ways that we just couldn't imagine before with conventional aerospace. Back when I worked at Rolls-Royce, engines were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and for very good reasons. The physics demanded it. But we can downscale again. We can scale that back. Now, I was talking to Aid, and as he mentioned, I don't know if this is a world first or something of trying to do a drone demo during an online conference. Let's see how far we get. It's either that or it's going to be a world first for a whole new kind of industrial accident. Whoa! How about that? So, what's going on there? That is electric flight in its purest form. And it's also demonstrating the extraordinary technologies that exist around electric flight in order to make it possible. So in other words, a whole series of technologies stitched together by generally computers. Every time I do that experiment, it just astonishes me. I know the physics, I know the technology, and it still just bowls me over every time. So that's what we can do. We've got flexibility, and it also gives us an insight into how this migration is going to take place. Is we're not really just going to have drop-in replacements for the existing technologies we've got. That's going to be a lot smaller. So at the moment, electric propulsion, hydrogen propulsion is rolling out relatively quickly to small aircraft, regional aircraft, and even down to the point where it's creating a whole new class of aircraft before, these flying taxis that we're all hearing about that didn't exist at all before. And that's really statement about the incredible flexibility that didn't exist before in propulsion systems. The issue goes, how do we scale it in the opposite direction? So I hope the technological miracle does occur, but I'm not expecting an electric transatlantic passenger plane until about 2050. I hope I'm wrong. And I do hope that people here can work towards proving me wrong. I also want to point out that aerospace is a huge subject with so many different parts, and we're not going to eat this problem in one sitting. If we could, if it was easy, we'd have done it already. So to sum up, electric and alternative propulsion systems is different. It's got a whole set of specific problems and also opportunities. So I suppose as a scientist and engineer, I'm always aware that most of the time we make progress where we can rather than where we'd like to. And science doesn't always take the shortest route to the answers we'd seek and look out for. And sometimes we just have to take the long way round to gain the wisdom that we need. But I think that we can and must get there in the end. And so with that, many thanks. And I'd be very happy to answer any questions that those thoughts raise. Thank you.
Steve, very many thanks for that. And of course, thank you for delivering probably the most shareable social media moment in the EV Summit's short 4.5-year history. So thanks very much indeed for that. There is a question about electric drones, which I'll come on to. But first of all, we have a question in from arguably one of the leading commentators in the sustainable aviation sector, Paul Pereira. I'm not sure if you know Paul, but he's very active on LinkedIn.
Very much so.
It's quite a technical question, slightly above my pay grade.
Yep.
I'll pose this one to you. When we consider hydrogen mass fraction, the amount of hydrogen for the tank weight, including hydrogen, what is the expectation for aerospace given the weight challenge you described? He says kerosene is at about 95%. So please take that one away.
Well, the energy density of hydrogen, I can't remember if it's slightly better or slightly worse than hydrocarbon. I think it's slightly lower, but that's not the problem, in my opinion. I'm a sort of reluctant skeptic about hydrogen. The issue is not one of fuel and energy densities, in my view, but one of systems and management systems that we're going to need in order to manage the hydrogen on board the aircraft. There's a simple case of the actual storage methods themselves, how on earth to get the weight out of those. But then the point also expands to how do we actually monitor and feed that hydrogen in. So I suspect the point stretches to both direct combustion of hydrogen in a turbine, and also the other holy grail of electric flight, which is hydrogen fuel cells. And I thought, oh, great, hydrogen fuel cells. Let's look into what it was. And I realized that there's no such thing as a pure hydrogen fuel cell system. It's essentially always going to be driving a hybrid system, driving into a battery-based system as well. So the worry I have about hydrogen, Paul, is complexity. Complexity, and also the old enemy as well as weight as well. So at the moment, I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a reluctant skeptic, but again, prove me wrong, please do.
Well, let's hope necessity is the mother of invention, as it has so often been in the history of engineering and science. A question in here from Paul Roberts. He asks, lots of solid state batteries in development for EVs in road transport, but surely aviation is a more relevant market. Is anyone looking into this?
Really interesting question, that, about battery, because this is actually more of a problem coming up the pipeline for us in the aerospace industry, because up till now in aerospace and electric flight, we've kind of gleefully inherited this amazing legacy that's been brought to us by the automotive industry. The automotive has been throwing these astronomical amounts of money at improving cells for automotive. Trouble is, we're coming to a crossroads soon, and we're going to get to the point where, I don't know about you, but as soon as I can buy an electric car that can do 300 miles before a recharge, I'll then be starting to look to cost. And so we're probably going to come to a crossroads there as the automotive industry switches to reducing cost in battery technologies and ease of integration into the vehicles themselves. While at aerospace, as I say, weight is king, and we need to go a lot further down that weight reduction pathway as well. So we're going to have a big problem, but we are already seeing glimpses of people attempting to integrate battery technology into the airframe itself, just in the same way that modern airliners at the moment, the wings themselves are the fuel tanks of the aircraft. I speak from experience. I used to work on that bit forever. And so we've ridden this very, very easy wave so far. But this weight reduction problem and the chemistries that we're going to have to invent in order to go further down that road to achieve these requirements, they're going to be aerospace specific.
Thank you very much, Steve.